So, you're diving into the world of home loans, and suddenly you're hit with this alphabet soup of acronyms, right? LTV, CLTV, HCLTV. It can seriously feel like your lender is speaking a whole different language. Well, today, we're going to be your translator. We're breaking down exactly what these terms mean and, more importantly, how they really affect your ability to get a loan.
You know, at first glance, they all kind of seem to do the same thing. Measure your loan against what your home is worth. But those little subtle differences between them, they are absolutely crucial to a lender, which of course means they're crucial to you. So what is the real difference? Let's jump in and find out.
All right, here's our plan. We're going to start with the absolute foundation, which is LTV. Then we'll add another layer to it with CLTV. And after that, we'll get the full picture with HCLTV. Once we've got the concepts down, we'll run through a real-world calculation to see it in action, and then we'll wrap it all up by talking about why these numbers matter so much.
Okay, let's start with the bedrock of all these calculations, the loan-to-value ratio, or LTV. Pretty much everything else we're going to talk about builds right on top of this one.
So, what is it? Put simply, LTV just measures your first mortgage, against the official appraised value of your home. It's a really straightforward comparison. What you owe on that primary loan versus what the house is actually worth.
And the best part about LTV is just how simple it is. The math is super clean. You take your first mortgage balance, you divide it by the property's value, and that's it. We're not looking at any other loans, no lines of credit, just that one primary number.
Here's a super easy way to keep this straight. Just think L is for low. Because LTV only looks at that one main mortgage, it's always going to be the lowest, most basic ratio of the three. It's your baseline.
So now that we have our LTV baseline down, let's add another layer to the whole thing. Let's talk about the combined loan-to-value ratio, or CLTV.
The key word here is obviously combined. CLTV starts with your first mortgage, and then it adds the outstanding balance of any other loans you have on the property. We're talking second mortgages and this is important, the amount you are currently using from a home equity line of credit, or a HELOC.
What this really means is that CLTV gives the lender a much more realistic snapshot of your current debt tied to that property. It's not just the main loan anymore, it's the grand total of what you owe right this second across all the loans tied to the house.
Let's go back to our little memory trick. Think C for center. CLTV is that middle ground calculation. It's definitely more complete than LTV, but as we're about to see, it still doesn't quite tell the whole story.
And that brings us to the final piece of this puzzle, the one that gives a lender the most complete view, the high combined loan-to-value, or HCLTV. This is the one that really looks at the maximum possible risk.
And here it is, the single most important difference. HLCTV combines that first mortgage with your other loans, but for a HELOC, it adds the full credit limit, not just the little bit you've used. So if you have a $50,000 HELOC, but you've only drawn out, say, $100, HLCTV counts the whole $50,000.
So why on earth do lenders do this? Well, from their perspective, you could go out and draw that full amount tomorrow. HCLTV is their way of calculating the worst-case scenario. It represents the absolute maximum potential debts that could be tied to your property.
And this brings our little mnemonic full circle. H is for high. HCLTV will always give you the highest ratio of the three because it's looking at that maximum potential debt. So just remember, L for low, C for center, and H for high. Simple as that.
All right, enough with the definitions. I think the best way to really get this stuff is to see the math play out. So let's run through a practical example and calculate all three of these ratios for a homeowner.
Okay, here's our scenario. We've got a borrower with a primary mortgage of $488,215. They also took out a second mortgage for $12,564, and they have a HELOC with a total limit of $25,000, but they've only used $8,000 of it. After some upgrades, their home's new appraised value is $785,599. Let's figure out their LTV, CLTV, and HCLTV.
Okay, first up, LTV. Remember, L is for low, so we only need that first mortgage. We take the $488,215 divided by the home's value, and that gives us our foundational LTV of 62.14%.
Next, CLTV. C for center or combined. So here we add the first mortgage, the second mortgage, and the part of the HELOC they're currently using, that's the $8,000. Divide that total by the home's value, and we get a CLTV of 64.63%.
And finally, HCLTV. H for high. Now here's the key switch. We take the first and second mortgages, but instead of the $8,000 they've used on the HELOC, we add the total available credit line of $25,000, and that gives us our highest ratio, 66.92%.
And here you can see it all laid out, side by side. The LTV shows that simple baseline. The CLTV adds the debts they have right now, and the HCLTV shows the absolute maximum potential debt. It's a perfect way to see how a lender looks at risk one step at a time. Okay, so we can do the math, that's great, but why does any of this actually matter to you? What's the real-world impact of these percentages? Let's get to the so what of all this.
These percentages aren't just numbers on a worksheet. They hit you directly in the wallet. Why? It all boils down to one word: risk. A lower LTV tells a lender that you have more skin in the game, which means less risk for them and a better interest rate for you. It's the number that decides if you have to pay private mortgage insurance or PMI, and it's often the key that unlocks whether you can even refinance. From getting approved in the first place to the rate you pay for decades, these ratios are how lenders decide if you're a good bet.
So we've cracked the code on the acronyms, and we've walked through the math. You now have the tools to see your own home equity through the exact same lens as a lender. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Now that you understand these numbers, how does it change what you think is possible for your home?